Hi, welcome to the channel today. Today's kind of a miserable day. I was going to do a video on how to plant potatoes and plant my tomato plants and all that. And it rained about 5 inches earlier in the week. We probably got 2 or 3 inches at least last night, and it's still sprinkling right now, so it's too wet to do that. So I did think I've been working on a video about what you need to get started. If you're trying to start planting, what do you need and what's the best thing to use to plant your garden? What's some things you may not think about? And the first thing I want to talk to you about is sunlight, which right now we don't have, but you need about 6, most times you see things that say you need to have full sunlight. And I always took full sunlight. I mean, you at least got 10, 12 hours of sunlight for full sun. Technically, full sunlight just means they need to have direct sunlight for 6 hours or longer. Partial sunlight means 4 to 6 hours of sunlight, and part of that would be in the afternoons. Partial shade means 4 to 6 hours of morning sun, and then shade would be 4 hours or less of direct sunlight. So that kind of gives you an idea. So where we're standing right now, the sun comes out behind my cameraman, in front of me. We do have a tree there, but still this area right here will get what they call full sun, even though this tree over here will block the sun in the afternoons, but still we get 6 hours of sunlight, so it's considered full sun. So if you're in an apartment or something, it could mean something. If you're on the north side of an apartment building, that's going to pose a problem, because a lot of times it's mostly shaded there. But if you're on the east side or the west side of the apartment building, you should still get that 6 hours of sunlight, unless there's a big building right beside it. But kind of look at that, so don't get all bent out of shape. If you say, oh, I'm only getting 6 hours, what can I grow? Well, basically you can grow anything as far as the sunlight requirement. Number 2 is how you're going to water them. Are you going to use a bucket, like over here? These work pretty good. The knock on these water cans, hopefully that won't be too loud. The knock on a water can works pretty good, but if you're going to be watering something like this, it's going to take a lot of water cans to do it. So that's not that great, but I use water cans a lot. And like here I got a trash can. I'll fill them up with water and turn the water in, turn it on, and then I will go to my different plants that's in pots to water them. That's not that bad as long as you don't have a very long walking area. As long as you're walking just a few feet. But if you're walking 40 or 50 feet and you gotta make a trip every time, and these things are heavy. This should be about 16, that's 16 pounds. So if you carry 2 of them, that's 32 pounds. That does get tiring. If you got a raised bed like this, this sure works pretty good. You turn it on and off. Once you turn on the deal, you can water it. The only thing about that, if you're doing it in ground, you're going to have to hold that a lot longer than you think. I've heard somebody say, well, you count to 10 or whatever. That works in a raised bed. It does not work if you're out there on the ground trying to water something. So just remember, it takes a lot more time than you think watering it. The best thing to use, if you can get a drip system or a sucker hose, they work really well. But just remember, don't put your garden out somewhere where you can't get water to it. Now, I say that, I do have one area that it's kind of tough to get water to it, but I can. But it's a big garden, it's off to the side. But if you're going to grow something in a pot or a tree, you're going to have to water, make sure it's close to a faucet or something where you can get water to it. The third thing you got to decide, am I going to be using a raised bed or a container? And that's probably the 2 biggest ones. If you're going to get started, use one of the 2. Now, raised beds are nice. This one here costs about $200. And then to fill it up, if you just to buy the bag stuff, probably costs you another $200, $250. That gets expensive. And if you're just starting, now you don't have to use this. Those concrete blocks that you buy at the lumber yard, they work really well. You can change size and shape and all that.
I know one guy was saying never use those, but I mean, if you're on a budget, they work. It gives you 8 inches, and that's enough. As long as you fill it all the way up, that's going to be enough for a raised bed. One knock on the raised bed, I've got trees around me. These raised beds will attract those tree roots. In this raised bed here, I've had a bunch of tree roots after a couple of years, and I had to dig up those tree roots, and I wouldn't have to go around it, with a shovel to break those tree roots up, because it was sucking all the nutrients out of it and all the water out of that raised bed. So that can be a problem, especially if you have something like a mulberry tree or something of that nature that is a very aggressive root, has a very aggressive root system. So that's one of the knocks on those. If you're going to use a container, most people look at it and say, hey, I'm going to use a 5-gallon bucket, okay? Now, how much rain we've gotten? This bucket was empty a couple of days ago, a week or so ago. So that's how much rain we've got. Buckets are nice if you got a deep-rooted plant, like a pepper plant. But the problem is, you have a lot of growing area. What I like better is if you can get something that's more like this here. And this is those slop buckets that you can buy at the lumber yard, because with about the same amount of potting mix, you can get a lot more surface area. And this is good for growing lettuces, beets, something of that nature. Even beans will work well in this one. Some of your micro tomatoes will work well in that. But but any of your leafy vegetables, you have a lot more area. And these things cost $12, $13 now. It used to be $8, but then everything's went up. And an even bigger one that you can get, you come up over here, and that costs about $20. And that's still one of those slop buckets or whatever. Is one like this here. And this is even bigger. This is why I'm growing the mints in. So, it works really good. Over here I've got one of those buckets. I've got thyme growing here. I got some endive growing here. You could have some, it just has a lot of area. You can also get this is an old trough that was leaking. So I put potting mix in it, and this is some mustard growing there. You can grow lettuce or whatever. So they're really good for that. And since it's up off the ground, you don't have to worry about roots getting into it or getting out of it. Now, one thing I will caution, if you're going to be, I think this one over here is done that way. Well, you can't see it. Guess I can see me walk around a little bit. One thing, if I'm going to be drilling holes in these things, you don't want to do what this one's done. Basically, this ain't come out very easy. You can look down in here. It's got holes in the bottom of it. What those holes do is allows a place for the tree roots to come up in it, or it allows a place for whatever you're planting here, like if it's a fig tree or something, they can escape and root down in there, and then you can't move it. So you also can't tell if any water's running out the bottom of it. So if I'm going to be doing a bucket or something, put your hose up on the sides. I cut this one right here. That gives me a little bit of reservoir here. You could actually probably put up this high, but that gives you a little bit of reservoir down here. So when you're watering in the summertime, it comes down and you have a little water there, because that way you can water it to where it comes out the hole, and you hope that you're getting some water coming through it. So kind of figure out what container you want to use. Those are kind of nice containers to use, but a lot of stuff you can use. I mean, I've even got some rat poison that cut some holes in it and put it in there. Now the rat poison was in pouches, so it should be okay. But that makes it pretty easy. Don't cheap out on your potting mix if you're putting them in containers. Okay, Fox Farm is a good one I've been using for seeding mix. It's been working pretty well. You can make your own, but if you're beginning, that might be a little. I do have a video on that. If you do a lot of stuff, that's a better way of doing it. but don't try to go up there and find out the cheapest, Walmart brand that's out there. Try to keep one that's of good quality. Pro Mix is another good one. You can also add some pine bark mulch if it's that finer pine bark mulch to extend it a little bit. But just try to get some that's of good quality, not some cheap stuff, and try to get potting mix and not potting soil, because you really don't want any type of soil in these containers. They just don't drain well. And they work pretty good for annuals. The potting mixes you buy in the store works pretty good for annual plants. Perennial plants you may want to make your own because it'll last longer, making your own. The other big thing is planting dates. I think that's the biggest mistake people make when they first start gardening. They're thinking, hey, I can plant whenever it feels good. Or I'm in the South. They come from the north, they come down to the south, and y'all got a long growing season. Well, we don't really. We got 2 short ones, maybe 3 if you count winter. But we have a spring, we have a fall. And if you plant too late in the spring, summer's going to hit and it's going to kill almost everything. Most of the stuff we plant in gardens do not like 95, 100 degree temperatures on a daily basis. So they're not going to survive. Tomato plants, pepper plants struggle, cucumbers, corn, beans, all that type of stuff. So you do have, planting dates are very critical. I know I'm going to be trying to plant up my tomatoes pretty quickly, but right now it's really cold, so I can't. But if it was not cold today, I'd actually be planting my tomatoes. That's early. Now I also got enough tomatoes that if I do freeze out, I can do it again. So it's not the worst thing in the world if you plant too early. But if you plant too, I one time had a guy that was going to plant tomatoes in, I think, the later part of April, because his wife bought some. And me and another lady was talking to him and said, well, you're going to have to plant it because your wife bought them, but you're not going to make any tomatoes. Just the way life works. Because I said, by the time that you're going to have those things set, it's going to be hot. You're going to be trying to make ripe tomatoes in the middle of July, August, and it's just not going to work. You might get 1 or 2 at the most, So don't wait a long time before you plant them. But then peppers are the opposite. If you put peppers out in weather like this, they're not going to produce very well because they'll stunt and they'll be stunting for the rest of the year. So planting dates are very crucial. And that's probably one of the most important things that you're going to do is figure that out. Now, A&M, the AgriLife Service, sometimes will have planting dates, and I'll tell you the optimal planting dates for these things. Go by those pretty closely when you're first starting out. You may change, because if they say don't plant any tomatoes till March 5th, I think here, I'll plant them a little earlier. I know I may have to cover them, but still, if you're just starting out, go that route, and then try to go a little earlier if you can in the first part of the plant if you're in Texas, because you can always replant, but if you plant too late and it gets hot, the season's over. Now, what to grow? And you say, okay, I haven't grown anything, I want to grow something. Grow something you like to eat. It sounds great if lettuce is easy to grow, but if you don't like lettuce, there's really not much reason to grow it. And you're going to kind of get, so, well, okay, that was a certain amount of trouble, is it worth it? But some plants that are easy to grow is lettuce, leaf lettuce. Iceberg lettuce is the poorest quality lettuce we have. The only reason people eat iceberg lettuce is what they grew up on, so they like the crispy texture to it. It has very little nutrition to it, but it lasts a long time. So you can cut it in the field and it will last for a week or two, where your leaf lettuces, you cut them and they go downhill pretty quick. But if you grow them yourself, you don't have to worry about that because you're going to cut them and eat them the same day. So leaf lettuces, the Butter Crunch lettuces are okay. The romaine lettuces are all right, but just don't go with the iceberg lettuce. Number 2 is green beans. Green beans are pretty easy to grow. Stick them in the ground, about that far, about an inch and a half at the most, half an inch, and they'll come up and they'll grow. Unless you get some type of a bug, pill bug, something like that, they're pretty easy to grow for first-time gardeners. And they'll make pretty good. They're ones that will produce well. Number 3 is peppers. Sweet peppers especially. Don't plant them too early, but they do tend to be pretty productive and they can handle the heat better than a lot of things. So they're pretty productive with the peppers. Number 4 is tomatoes. Now, you got to plant the right kind of tomatoes, and the only thing I kind of nervous about saying that is there's different kinds of tomatoes. And we'll have to walk over here. And when I say that, if you're going to try to grow in a 5-gallon bucket, you're going to want, that's the ones I was looking for. Okay, up over here. These are regular sized tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes are easier to grow, but not in containers per se. See, I got stuff planted all over. I'm trying to harden my plants off and trying to get them slowed down in case I can't plant them. Hopefully by tomorrow, if I get a chance, but we also got stuff. These here are dwarf tomatoes, and they don't get near as big, and they are really designed or bred to produce on 5-gallon buckets. So if you can get a dwarf type tomato, that's good. Now if you want to grow even smaller buckets, like 1-gallon buckets, a micro dwarf would do well. Again, these are my regular tomatoes, and these are the dwarf tomatoes. So they're 2 different sizes. Here's lettuce here, and then some mustard up on the south side. I did allow a space between these two because you put them in the same tray. You don't want, if I planted these right up against it, it would have started, you know, they're kind of doing it anyway. But I meant to have these out by now. So, like I say, planting the right kind of tomatoes. Tomatoes are pretty easy. And of all the things that you grow in a garden, they're one of the ones that I'll say is better quality compared to what you buy in the store. Tomatoes you buy in the store just aren't any good. Even if you buy the little cherry tomatoes, they got thick skins. A homegrown tomato would taste multiple times better. In fact, some people will not eat a store-bought tomato, but they love homegrown tomatoes. So, you know, I do encourage you, if you've started, go ahead and try to start some, but just try to get, and if you can't find the dwarfs, go with a determinate type tomato. 5-gallon bucket's really too small for them, but you got to put a lot of water in them. And honestly, if I was going to do it in a 5-gallon bucket with a regular sized tomato, you're not going to get many off of it. You want to drill that hole up about right here because you don't have plenty of water. Because in the summertime, you may have to water things twice a day. That's just the way they are. So tomatoes are pretty good for that. Another thing is like Irish potatoes, especially if you're going to have a raised bed. Potatoes work really well in it with your Irish potatoes. So, you know, they work well in this kind, and even a raised bed like this one over here, they work really nice. Carrots work really well in a raised bed or in a container, as long as that container is tall enough or deep enough that carrot can grow in it. They do have different kinds. They got short carrots. They're going to grow this long, so you can plant those in there. The secret to planting a carrot is you have to keep them, to get the seeds to germinate, it has to keep the top of that soil moist for 10 to 14 days. So that is an option, especially if you live further north, because right now we're getting too late to plant carrots. You might still get by with it, but you know, carrots are pretty, and carrots would work. You know, if I planted these here, I could see some more as long as they have some type of protection from the sun. You know, you're interplanting with something else. Carrots can go ahead and be good for a couple months later than you think. I mean, I've been having pulled tomatoes even in July, but those were carrots that was mixed in with other things, other pots and things. So onions are another one that's easy to grow. The only thing is they do need a fair amount of fertilizer or nitrogen. You have to plant them at the right time, and you have to get the right ones. Down here we have to get short day onions because we have shorter days in the wintertime. Up north they do long day onions, and in the middle of the country it's called intermediate hours. So intermediate day, I guess. But that's something to consider also. So, you know, it's a little bit harder, but, you know, it's something you may want to grow. To me, you want a fair amount of area because there's not, I don't know if there's a difference within eating, you know, a store-bought onion or a homegrown onion. Onion's an onion to me. Next thing when you get off the different you decide what you want, is you're going to have to be able to fertilize, all right? And if you're going to be fertilizing in a container, you're probably going to have to use some type of water-soluble fertilizer, such as Miracle Grow. Just a second. I always forget something. I got this right in the door. Okay. When you get Miracle Grow, if you're going to use it, you're going to come with a spoon like this. All right. Use a small part of the spoon if you're going to use it in a container. This is going to be too much. This and a gallon of water is all you need. And if you think you need more, you can always add more. But trying to put, a big spoon like this in it's going to give you too much fertilizer. It can burn the plants. It can make the plants grow too fast. So just a little bit goes a long ways. Now, if you're going to be planting in a raised bed, you can use some compost or whatever, and that can be your fertilizer. Just realize that the first year you do that, you may want to add some synthetic fertilizer, like for your nitrogen, because that first year, you got a lot of woody material in here a lot of times, and even here, it's not broken down enough yet. So that's going to leach a certain amount of nitrogen out of the soil. So always your second year you plant in a raised bed is going to be better than the first. So if you plant a raised bed, it doesn't do very good the first year. You may do the same thing the second year, and it just does a lot better. So always consider that and just realize that. Really, you should prepare your raised bed 6 months ahead of time before you plant anything in it. No one does that. Okay, but that's what you should do. And the other thing, the last thing I'm going to make is try to get you some kind of a mentor. Hopefully you can go out to AgriLife. They do have some master gardeners. They can help you out, maybe a neighbor. Most people in gardening are more than happy to help you in your gardening endeavor. So you can do that. You can also go YouTube sometimes if you got questions. Go to some of your smaller YouTube people, because let's face it, if you got 100,000 subscribers and you're getting 200 comments a day, you're not going to spend much time answering those comments. But if you're a smaller channel, you got 3,000 or 4,000, or me, I don't have 2,000 yet. You ask me a question, I'm going to comment on it, and if you have another question, I'll answer it too. Other people are kind of the same way. If the smaller content people will tend to answer your questions better, just because you got more time. It's not that the big guys are being snooty or anything. It's just, if I ever got to 100,000 subscribers and I was getting 100 comments, I'm not going to be very good at it either. And just because they have a lot of subscribers also doesn't mean that they're any better as far as giving advice than what I would be, or what somebody else like me. I've been doing it for a long time. I don't mind helping. I don't mind answering questions, and even you can even email me if you want to, and I'll answer it that way, because some people don't like putting this stuff in the comments. But anyway, it's starting to rain again, and it was supposed to stop about 1 o'clock, and now it's what, 3 o'clock? So anyway, hopefully I've explained some stuff to you. If you have any questions, put it in the comments, and I'll answer them. And I'll see you next time, and hopefully the next video will be about planting some potatoes or tomatoes or something. See you later. See you next time.